Welcome to episode 1 of Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series, And Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of top-shelf guests ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe. Special thanks goes out to Jeff McAvoy and especially co-producer Dennis Dykin, without whom this series would not have happened. Welcome then to episode 1. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the early days of the Beach Boys, Psst, along with author James B. Murphy. And away we go then.
By 61, Brian has already had most of his musical education from learning the Four Freshmen parts and the harmony with his record collection and his piano. Why can't we do this? Why can't we write a song, about the surfing phenomenon on the West Coast? And that's what happens. They go back home, they share that news with Carl and Brian, and, at some point, they're all sitting around. I think Dennis probably contributed a lot of the lyrics to Surfin', and he goes uncredited.
I see this as really the germination point of the actual band, not an initial inspiration point, but, to trace the Beach Boys back. Mike and Dennis are hanging out a hell of a lot at this point. In Malibu, Redondo Beach, they're hanging out, ripping it up, and on one of these visits, Mike gets really excited and tries to persuade Dennis to talk to Brian about starting a group. In July 1961, during a fishing trip bonding session with Dennis, they start talking about the whole surfing craze and why it makes sense to do a real surf song, not just an instrumental, as was the typical order of the day. And at the time, Dennis wasn't as musically driven as his brothers, but he saw the potential. So he went home, real inspired from this talk with Mike, and told Brian about it, and Brian's intrigued. Summer 1961, things start picking up speed now. Al Jardine completes his freshman year at Ferris University and returns to L.A. He enrolls at El Camino Community College. Al also reforms his old folk group, the Islanders.
When Al comes back in June of 61, when he comes back from Michigan, he comes back because his father hated teaching. His father quits Ferris University and moves back. Al finishes out the semester. He moves back. He's back in the Hawthorne area by June 12, 1961. He's living with his buddy Gary Winfrey, one of the Islanders. Their other Islander, Bob Barrow, has gone to Salt Lake City to go to Brigham Young University, and they recruit Don Winfrey, Gary's younger brother. He reforms the Islanders. Think of it as two parallel paths. Jardine is pursuing his musical future with the Islanders and his folk music sensibilities. Brian, tons of experience putting vocal combos together in high school. He's got his brothers, he's got his cousin. They're a quartet. Brian envisions, I think, the group as he models them after the Four Freshmen. He's thinking, can we create a vocal harmony group in the mold of the Four Freshmen? Two paths that eventually converge shortly after Jardine runs into Brian on the campus of El Camino.
The group is made up of Brian, Dennis, Carl, and Mike, and with fashion in mind, they call themselves the Pendletones. They thought, if they hit it big, maybe the company will send them some free shirts. This tryout doesn't go any better than the first one that Brian flopped. Dorinda doesn't remember him. Murray introduces Al and his folk group, the Islanders, to Height and Dorinda Morgan, a husband and wife team with a small music publishing business and a recording studio on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood. The Morgans' no-frill studio gives aspiring artists a chance to record demos, which could then be sold to record labels. Some years back, Murray had tried to use the Morgans for his own songs, with a teenage Brian singing in their studio, and the Morgans had passed. Al and his group hoped to have better luck, but the couple wasn't impressed, and Dorinda supposedly said they were imitators, not originators. They performed, of all things, Sloop John B., which at the time they knew as a song originally titled The Wreck of the John B., along with a few other recent chart numbers. Haidt asks Brian if he can write something original. So Dennis pipes up. This is a crucial moment in Beach Boys lore. Dennis pipes up, asking the Morgans if they knew about the surf craze. He says that they have their own original song called Surfin', and the truth is that the song's not even fully written yet. It's like a half-baked concept, right?
According to one lore, yeah.
So Brian tells him he'll call the Morgans back as soon as it's done. They all come back to the house, and Mike and Brian sit down at the piano to finish the song. Mike says, our collaborations were usually interactive. Either one of us might come up with the concept. What's this song about? Brian started with a melody, which he played for me. My specialty was finding the hook or phrase that drew people in. I typically wrote the bulk of the words, while Brian structured the harmonies to fit our voices. I weighed in on the arrangements as well, in particular the bass parts. In fact, a jaw-dropping section of your book, Jim, spotlights a seemingly key moment in the rehearsal process. And if I can, I just want to read one quick section here. Meanwhile, the Wilson brothers in love continued to rehearse Surfin'. During another rehearsal, Brian's Wollensack captured an exchange that offers a glimpse of the friction Surfin' and its potential for financial reward had already begun to cause within the family. An unidentified boy present at the rehearsal, who, based on the audio evidence, sounds like a young teen, asks incredulously, "You guys wrote that song by yourselves? Who wrote it, all of you?" Dennis responds, "I did." Brian clarifies, "We all did. Dennis and Carl got the great idea. Mike and I just got a few ideas." Mike counters sardonically, "Yeah, well, we got a few ideas, like the music and most of the words." When they continue to argue about writing credits, Dennis offers, "We all wrote a tremendous amount of words." Mike says, "You shouldn't even sweat it, because it's going to be a big flop the way we're going now." And by the way, Mike, in every studio outtake that I've ever heard, has something negative to offer. Whether you're a Mike Love fan or disparager, you cannot deny that he's always got something deflating, a pin for anyone's balloon in the studio. They discuss an argument from the night before, ostensibly between Brian and Dennis. The inference is Dennis did not receive credit for his lyrical contribution to Surfin'. When Carl prods Dennis to tell Mike about, quote, that argument last night, Mike shoots back, "Yeah, he told me, don't sweat it. It's not worth arguing about until the coins start coming in, because there won't be any coins at this rate." In light of the legal battles the band endured years later over songwriting credits, it's interesting to note that before their first song was even recorded, they argued over writing credit and how the money would be divided. Talk about boding unwell for a group. There was turmoil in the band from the very first day, and it continued every day, recalled Jody Gable, their friend and first president of their fan club. It was always there. When you put a bunch of very creative people together, you're going to have conflict. Although Dennis has always been credited as the inspiration for Surfin', the songwriter's credit and royalty were shared by Brian and Mike. Dennis later downplayed his role in the song's creation. "I think lyrically there was an influence, an idea, that's about it. I didn't participate in the writing at that time at all." All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 4 weekly episodes. That's Friday's free episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound episode, which showcases Patreon members and the Elephant Six world, your Monday bonus episode, and your Wednesday early release ad-free super extended director's cut of that Friday's show. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/discograffiti.